Do you want your business to grow faster? Are you open to new and out-of-the-box ways to drive revenues and increase value? How do you imagine the most successful entrepreneurs and business leaders double, triple, or expand their businesses tenfold or more? The answer is deals. This is a weekly podcast featuring conversations with business owners, executives, and leaders as we reveal behind-the-scenes details that give you, our listeners, the confidence to pursue your own deal-driven growth. On the show, we discuss a huge variety of deals, everything from large, complex mergers and acquisitions to smaller deals that you can do even without significant capital. My name is Corey Kupfer, and I've been supporting deal-driven growth for businesses for 35 years as a successful entrepreneur, professional negotiator, and attorney. My goal is to help you strategize, plan for, find, and complete deals that will help your company grow faster. Welcome to the Deal Quest podcast. Let's get started. Jessica Polito has spent her entire career providing M&A advice to the wealth management space. She founded Turkey Hill Management in 2021 to provide an alternative to the traditional investment banking model. By not charging success fees, she ensures complete alignment with the fiduciary she represents while still providing expertise, experience, and connections from a career in wealth management M&A. Jessica lives in Connecticut with her husband and 4 young children. Jessica, welcome to the podcast.
Corey, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So listen, for anybody, whether they're in the wealth management space, and we have many, many clients and listeners, as you know, that are, but even if people aren't, the idea of somebody who does M&A, who doesn't charge the success fee is going to be intriguing and fascinating. So I want to talk about that and your experience and what you're seeing in the market. But before we go there, I want to take you back to when you were a little girl growing up, maybe 8, 10, 12 years old. What did you want to be? Because I'm guessing an M&A professional in the wealth management space wasn't it back then, but you tell me.
So my first memory of telling anyone what I want to be when I grow up was at my little sister's birthday party in our backyard. I was probably younger than 8, maybe 6 or 7. And there was an entertainer who came and she was singing songs, and it was about what you want to be when you grow up. And they asked me, the big sister of the birthday girl, and I confidently said, a waitress. I thought being a waitress, especially on roller skates, was just the pinnacle of a career move. I have had many service jobs in my career. Somehow waitressing is not one of them.
And certainly not on roller skates, huh?
It has evolved over time. Funny, my dad is an entrepreneur. So I had written entrepreneurship off, even though the college that I went to is known for its entrepreneurship program. But I was in high school when I decided that I wanted to be an investment banker, though to be perfectly honest, I don't think I know what it meant. I thought it sounded cool and I knew they made a bunch of money.
That's funny.
So, I went to college. I was very interested in investing and helping people. So I decided in college, either investment banking or wealth management. And then I graduated and realized you could marry the two. And I felt like the luckiest person on the planet to get to have my hands in both.
Love it. It's funny what you said about, I was in this special law, politics, and community affairs program in Tilden High School in Brooklyn. And I decided I want to be a lawyer in high school, similar to what you were saying. And I always say the same thing. And that's what got me here, except I still had no idea really what a lawyer did. I mean, we were doing mock trials and whatever, but no, I mean, to do M&A law, no, I had no idea. Great. One other question looking back. What was your first deal of any type? It could be something small as a kid, or it could be something early in your career. What comes to mind as first deal?
Well, I mean, you're like bringing back uncovered memories from my childhood. So I don't know that I have one specific answer for you, but I do know I had a little sister 2 years younger than me, and everything among 2 sisters close in age is a negotiation. Maybe I have her to thank for where I am today. My parents probably disagree. I think we age them too quickly, but especially as the older sister, you like to have the upper hand and you like to get your way. She's 5 inches taller than me, so brute force was not an option.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. So you had to really learn diplomacy and negotiation. Yeah.
I guess so.
You see, I had, my brother's 5 years younger than me, so I had the advantage of brute force, but my parents prohibited it. Like there was a rule that I could not hit him for any reason whatsoever, which he knew and took great advantage of.
And now you're a negotiator for a living as well.
That's right.
So
That is right.
perhaps there's a common thread.
Exactly. All right, great stuff. So, all right, so listen, let's talk about the present and what you do, and then we'll go back and talk about how you got here, because you've taken some unique approach, right, to M&A. What said in your bio, no success fees. Certainly, most of the folks that put M&A deals together and do some of the stuff you do, and I want you to talk about what you do it in the context of a traditional investment banking model, whether that's in the wealth management space or outside of it, where they take some amount of retainer usually, and then they take a success fee on top of that. Sometimes they'll offset some of the retainer, all the retainer, whatever, against the success fee. But talk to me about your model, who you work with, and then I want to know sort of how you got to this unique model.
I think I can probably answer all of those questions without you having to ask it again, but if I forget, please step in. I mean, look, I guess I'll start by just giving away the secret sauce, which is that I don't have a big operation. I think there are a lot of investment banks who do an incredible job. I came from one of them. There are many others, or a handful of others, just intelligent people who really have a lot of experience and know what they're doing. And part of their jobs is to bring in 25-year-olds and 30-year-olds and help them rise through the ranks and learn the business, but they have costs associated with them, right? In addition to, the Manhattan address and all of that. And success fees go to help support the financial models under which most investment banks operate. I happen to be in a unique situation because I don't have a lot of overhead. So I don't have to whack up success fees the way that you would see at a traditional investment bank. For better or worse, when you're working with me, all you're working with is me. Mm-hmm. So, I guess, there's no analyst that's crunching the numbers on my behalf. There's no associate who's reading over the business summary before it goes out. But in doing so, I don't have to charge a success fee. I'm able to charge a retainer fee. And financially, it ends up working out about the same. For me, it saves the client hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right.
But that's not really why I'm doing it. I think if I were charging a success fee, people would pay it because that's kind of the only other option out there. The reason that I'm doing it is because when you think of a fiduciary, right? Like there are many, many wealth management founders that I talk to who say, well, I don't sell insurance. Well, we don't have products because I don't want my clients to think that I'm aligned with making money off of them, right? I just charge a percent of AUM or a financial planning fee or whatever it is, and I do whatever is in the client's best interest. Yeah. And when you think about the M&A advisor that has to represent the fiduciaries, I think it should be the same. Mm-hmm. So by removing a success fee, I don't care if you sell to the highest bidder. I don't care if you walk away halfway through negotiating a purchase agreement. All I care is that we're doing it for the right reasons. And the client, whether they're on the buy side or the sell side, feels fully confident in the decision that they're making. Yeah. Because it's one of the biggest decisions of their lives. You get married, you have kids, you buy a house, whatever. You're probably only going to sell your business once. And, as a buyer, you have limited resources to do deals, right? It works on both sides. I don't want a buyer asking me, well, are you telling me that I should add another half turn to the EBITDA multiple because it's the right thing to do, because it's market, or because you're going to get a bigger success fee if I do it, right? Yeah. So that's the soapbox that I stand on. And in terms of clients that I work with,
yes,
I kind of assumed when I started that I was going to be working with the smaller firms that maybe were only going to sell for a few $1 million and didn't want to pay a banker, $500,000 to have it done. I say this all the time. It turns out the bigger the firm, the bigger the success fee. And no one is particularly happy writing a $2 million check either. So I have been humbled by my client list, by the interest that what I'm doing has received, the fact that I have the opportunity to work with buyers and sellers. It's been amazing. Honestly, it makes my job so exciting, and it makes me so happy to walk into my home office, no overhead, and do what I do every day, knowing that I get to do it for what I feel are kind of the right reasons. With a diverse client base, it's awesome.
Love it. So let's drill down on a little more. So talk to me about the range, and I gather it's a range, and same with us. We do some smaller deals, we still do some very big deals. What's the range in terms of deal size or company size, on the buy side, on the sell side, in terms of what you handle?
So because there's no success fee, I don't have like minimum sizes necessarily. What
Yep.
I like to say is that I'm very good at almost nothing, but what I am very good at, I'm very good at. So what I don't do are lift outs, for
Yep.
example, because there are people who dedicate their entire careers to helping with lift outs. I don't think you need my services to like put together a revenue share. Same thing, kind of like one guy who's operating out of Excel who's just overwhelmed, like it's not really a sale, right? Or an acquisition. That's really kind of someone who needs an employment contract. So I don't do that. My background is equally focused in wealth management and asset management. In this iteration of my career at Turkey Hill, I focus solely on wealth management. To me, asset management, institutional firms, right, are product driven, which is not dissimilar from not financial services, right? It's like if the product is good and performing well, you're going to get money, and if it starts performing poorly, the consultants are going to take it away, right? Wealth management, I mean, what I hear over and over again is like, yeah, I talk to my clients for 5 minutes about what their investment portfolio looks like, and then we get on to how their kids are doing and how close they are to retirement and all that, and it's personality driven, which is what I like and where I think I kind of can add value. So it's true wealth management. It's not really broker dealers, unless it's a broker dealer buyer who is interested in entering the wealth management space, like something like that could work. I don't deal with alternatives. I think there are people that specialize in hedge funds, buying hedge funds, like that kind of thing. And I don't need to be the best of everything. I don't really do valuation work unless
Yep.
it's specifically related to a transaction, because again, there are people who are really, really good at it. They'll charge you less and they'll do a better job.
Yep. Yep.
So,
So in terms of the scope, what you do, and then I want to talk about like the market and lessons and deals and things like that. So let's talk about what people traditionally think investment bankers would do, right? Part of what they do is they help find buyers if you're a seller. They potentially help find sellers if you're a buyer. They help, especially on the sell side, help sort of package, right? The company for presentation and for sale. Investment bankers often talk about creating a process, right? Where they get bids and that kind of stuff. Some of them do valuation work internally. Some of them send it out. They do some level of deal structuring. That's sort of where the investment bankers and the attorneys start to overlap, right? And if the good ones work together well on that. So in terms of that range of things that investment bankers do, what of those, if anything, or if all of them, and I sort of know the answer, but for the audience, what's the range of what you do cover?
so for better or worse, all I know is investment banking. So, well, I mean, what I say is like, I can help in any section, right? Like if you have already signed an LOI, but you want to make sure that you're not missing anything because you've never done this before and just need help negotiating the purchase agreement, or help understanding the due diligence list or whatever, like I'm happy to just kind of like plug in. And I think my model allows for that flexibility. But by and large, what I'm doing is no different than if you were to hire a traditional investment bank. It's on the sell side, you've decided that it's time to sell your business. So now what? We do the whole thing. We put together a business summary, we come up with a prospect list, we're reaching out on your behalf, having preliminary meetings, soliciting proposals, going exclusive, doing due diligence, negotiating the purchase agreement from a business standpoint, because you definitely need a M&A attorney to help you on the legal side, and getting to signing. On the buy side, I mean, it's basically just that, but flipped.
Yeah.
So putting together marketing collateral, coming up with prospect lists, coming up with proposals, doing the modeling, and so on to get to signing.
And you can pick out anything that comes to mind on the buy or the sell side. What are the mistakes that firms make that either have them not successfully close a deal, or maybe adversely affects the evaluation, or what are some of the mistakes that folks make out there?
Well, okay, I guess I'll start with the cliche, which is that momentum is always your friend in deals. So a big problem that happens is, you get halfway through and then you get cold feet, decide to take 2 months off, and then things kind of just like slowly fall apart. I think that's actually somewhere where advisors can help. They kind of keep the momentum going. Often founders or owners are so overwhelmed by their day jobs that taking on a second job, selling their firm, it's exciting and it's lucrative, but it's hard to keep up the momentum when it's quarter end, when, your CFO is on vacation, whatever. So having an advisor kind of sherpa you through the process, make sure that, things aren't falling by the wayside, helps to get a deal done.
Yeah.
What I try to advise all of my clients, because things start getting, as you know very well, emotional, and deal fatigue starts to set in once you're at the point where you're exclusive and you are dual pathing due diligence and the negotiation of a purchase agreement.
Yeah.
And it's usually when you get down to the negotiations of things that are never going to happen, but have really severe consequences if they do, that people start to get really, really frustrated. And the advice that I like to give is, you're joining this organization, right? Or this organization is becoming part of your organization. You have to think not only about what's best for you, but about how you want them to handle future deals once you guys are together. So it's very easy to get bogged down on details and feel like you're being penalized for no reason or whatever. When you're able to take a step back and kind of look at the big picture and why you're even at this point in the first place, it becomes a lot easier to put perspective on what's left to negotiate. And I find that often it really, really helps to get the deal to completion.
Love it. Let's talk about, you focus in the wealth management space. We do deals across industries, but our biggest single niche by far is the wealth management space. So
the best people.
And so let's talk about what you're seeing in the market out there, because I did this special series with some of the top aggregators and integrators, like, the Mariners and the Sureties and the Wags and the, on and on, and, the High Towers, and I had the CEOs on. And, this was over the last one, it was over a few months, but the last one was a few months ago. So, the markets continue to move, but asking them, they were all optimistic about the future. We had a discussion, there was sort of a consensus agreement that we're in the early innings of a 9-inning ball game in the RA space, right? What's maturing, private equity's coming in, all that kind of stuff, but it's still pretty early, maybe like third inning, out of 9, right? But there was some short-term headwinds, right? Interest rates going up, cost of capital going up, stock market being,
predictable.
Exactly. And from their point of view as buyers, they all said, wow, we still have great deal flow. We're very optimistic. And I'm not saying that they don't believe that or they're wrong in any way, but of course they do have a vested interest in saying that. I know what our experience has been, which I will wait to share because I don't want it to influence. But it's an interesting, it's an interesting time, an interesting combination of what a lot of us think is, over the medium and long term, certainly, continued growth due to demographics and the fact that we still have plenty of breakaways coming in and the fact that it is early, but some headwinds up front. So what have you seen, after coming out of a couple of years of craziness, what have you seen lately in terms of deal volumes, deal structures, valuations, that kind of stuff?
Oh boy. Okay. Well, I agree that there will always be a place for M&A, which I think is kind of what you were alluding to in so many words. I mean, CityWire just came out with an article recently that said, I think it's like 15,000 RAs in existence right now. I mean, like, eventually everyone's going to hit a point where they don't have a succession plan in place and need to transact. So I think, there will always be deal flow, and there will always be, a steady stream of acquirers out there who are able to solve for succession or whatever else. So yeah, I mean, I don't think, on a macro level, M&A is going anywhere. In terms of what's happening in the market right now, I mean, the chatter among, my peers and just people that I talk to is, do you think valuations are going to go down? And I think the answer to that is that no, they're not going to go down. But I think educating the public on what constitutes a multiple may help expectations and align, especially sellers, with the broader market. I think during the pandemic, there was such a feeding frenzy for M&A, and the headlines had all of these crazy double-digit multiples, but no one took the time to say, well, that's because you have to achieve 30% growth without the help of market, right? Or, yes, but it lasts, 6 years or what, nothing like that is as good as it sounds. So I think sellers are becoming more educated.
Yep.
I think buyers are doing a good job of holding steady and not reacting to the fact that there are certain sellers that think they can get, 18 times for their 400 million AUM business, which is great. What I've seen a little bit of is a shift from growth-based earnouts
Yeah.
to retention payments,
Yep.
which is nice because while it's not guaranteed money, it's certainly more likely to be achieved
Sure.
than kind of setting your sights 3 years out and hoping that, if market is included, the market doesn't tank. And if it's not, you're able to keep your referrals up and grow the way that you think it's going to, which is great. I think what we're also seeing, as you alluded to, is an interest in the wealth management space by private equity, which is wild. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Wealth management is an annuity, right? I mean, clients are sticky, they don't go anywhere. It's affected by the market a little bit, but by and large, revenues are much more likely to increase over time than decrease.
Yes.
So it makes a whole bunch of sense from the private equity's perspective. But what it's doing, obviously, is it's funneling a lot more capital into the wealth management space to fund acquisitions. From a seller's perspective, I mean, it's great because there are more buyers than ever before. From a buyer's perspective, the game changes a little bit because you have to work harder to differentiate yourself. The way that the industry is headed, every wealth manager worth knowing is going to have, estate planning and trust services to one degree or another over the next handful of years because it's just becoming so ubiquitous, right? You kind of have to have it in order to be competitive. So having it isn't necessarily a selling point anymore, and you can't use the word culture because everyone's sick of using that word. So the question is how do you differentiate yourself as a buyer in a way that a seller can understand it, looking through a deck or reading an email that you sent them for the third time or within, the first 30 seconds of talking to you, which is interesting.
Yeah, that was really one of the big motivations of me doing that special series on the podcast, because I've been doing this long enough in this space for 25 years, where in the beginning there were no real buyers. There wasn't really much of an M&A market. There was certainly no private equity. And now there's this great thing called an abundance of choices, like you said, but you're right. But now the challenge is confusion. What's the difference between that one and that one? Why would I go with, I actually just had a conversation with a prospect who's about to become a client who was looking at alternatives, and they're like, okay, well, what, how do I figure this out? So, having the CEOs on from some of the top integrators and aggregators, they got to explain their model, and now it's a piece of content. At least, it's a start, right? Well, at least on the 9 or 10 of them I had on, people can hear it from the horse's mouth, so to speak, and start to get a feel. But then, it's even become more important, frankly, of professionals like us. And I think helping clear confusion in the marketplace is crucial now. In fact, I rarely plug my own stuff, but we just got the Wealthies Awards, coming up in September. We just got picked as a finalist in the legal category for this series we did, for the special series we did on the podcast, solely for that reason, because it's needed, helping folks understand is needed.
But you know what's funny? I don't mean to distill it down to it being this simple, because it's not. But when you take a step back, I mean, what differentiates one wealth manager from another, right? It's not dissimilar from being a high net worth individual sitting down with 3 people who all say, we offer trust and estate, we're going to help you with your taxes, we have these 3 model portfolios, whatever. But you meet with 3 of them and you click with one of them.
Right.
So at a certain point, I mean, not to use the word culture, because I do think that doesn't really encompass what I'm trying to say, but you can differentiate yourself as much as possible. But the reality is every firm has a different flavor. And I mean, unfortunately, you have to choose 1 or 2 representatives to reflect the flavor of the entire firm when they go out and meet with potential acquisition targets. But if they're able to do it properly, it's not that hard, to walk away after meeting for an hour and say, man, if the rest of the company is like this person, I hope that they understand the economics and they're not too far off from the top, because boy, do I want my clients to work with these people.
Yeah, I agree. I find that it comes, I mean, obviously there's a, usually, a first vetting before that, just, can they accommodate your business model? If you have brokerage, do they do that as well? Can they,
Right.
whatever, do they, you clients with a lot of alts, can they, whatever it is, whether it's on the investment policy, or they're doing cash deals or a lot more bigger piece of equity, does that appeal to you? So you get through some of that, but then once you narrow it down to find the models that fit you, then it's exactly, that's what it comes down to, right? People ultimately make the decision, especially, I think in all cases, the great thing about this industry is that folks, even if they're not staying around for a while, even if it is a succession deal, they care about their clients and their employees. So they care anyway. And certainly if they're going to be joining and being around for a while, that's ultimately the decision maker once they've narrowed it down to the pool that's the right fit for their model, which is great. This idea of, like, why you, right, as a buyer, why would somebody go to you? And, I have many clients that are below that rung of the top, of the PE funded aggregators and integrators. And, the question for them on how they compete on the buy side is, even more fascinating, right? Because they don't have PE money to throw around. They don't have equity that at least is promised or sold, to be, it's going to be hugely valuable. And the first thing I do say to them is, listen, you got to figure out your value proposition. It's very similar. You need a value proposition out to your clients and to your potential clients. All right, this is different, but if you want to attract candidates for you to buy, you've got to, it's like, why you? And being a great place to work and a great place to be and having a great culture is not a distinguisher, like you said. So I'd be interested in that, that from you, like, so if you're not a PE back, you're not one of those huge PE back firms, right? Who can throw a lot of money and promise valuable equity to a buyer. How are some of those firms? Because I know you do deals with, with the big boys and girls, and you do, deals with the, like we do with, with smaller acquirers. How does some of those firms that don't have that PE backing distinguish themselves and become attractive, other than being great people?
Well, I mean, look, if you don't have a ton of capital to spend, then you're probably not doing a bunch of deals, right? You're probably doing one deal that's going to make a huge impact on your firm.
Yep.
And I think that in and of itself helps distinguish you from the serial acquirers, because I mean, you have no choice but to be incredibly earnest, like in all likelihood, the first meeting is going to be with the CEO, not with the biz dev guy. And it immediately sets a different tone, especially if, the target that you're talking to has entertained conversations from some of the bigger buyers who are, I'm sure, knocking down their door because that's their jobs, right? I mean, the big acquirers, obviously they have organic growth and they have huge marketing campaigns and all that, but one of the drivers of their growth is an acquisition strategy, right? Sure. And typically, the CEO has a company to run and it is not spending 3 hours a day talking to prospects. If you are a, $2 billion shop with a little bit of money to spend on something that's going to be transformative for you, you're going to put a lot of effort into it. Obviously, you can hire a banker, an advisor, whatever, to take some of the work off of your plate, right? Yep. To go out and come up with a prospect list, make the initial calls on your behalf, and cull it down to the people who are actually interested in talking to you. But as soon as that list is culled, it's really up to you, and if you're the founder of this firm or you're the president or whatever, I mean, you care so deeply about the firm, and you may care deeply in a way that the next $2 billion firm with some money to spend cares, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be the same type of care. It doesn't have to be the same personality. It doesn't have to be the same anything, but you're going to want to jive really well with whoever is picking up what you're putting down, So in a case like that, I mean, you almost have to worry about differentiating yourself less, which is counterintuitive, but I mean, not really when you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, we had a client we've done a number of deals for in the Midwest, and their differentiator was like, oh, we're basically not the coastal aggregator, right?
Right, right.
Now obviously they built upon that. They said, we have Midwestern values and we're family, and we want people who are going to be here for a long time. We're not just looking for people who cash out. So they built on that. But the fundamental distinguisher for them was we're not that.
Yeah.
we're not the coastal aggregators.
Yeah, not that there's anything wrong with the coastal aggregators.
No, not at all.
They have
It's just different.
incredible business models, and they're doing a lot of things right and really, really well. 100%. Some people like it, some people don't. And it's nice that there are options.
Well, that's right. That's right. And I really believe in that, because I think there's a place for everybody. I mean, listen, one of the other things we do a lot of is breakaways, right? Brokers out of wirehouses and banks, and we believe in the independence movement. I've been doing it for years. We work with hundreds of advisors. But I believe that the wirehouses exist for a reason, and there are a lot of advisors who should never, ever leave a wirehouse, okay? Yeah. And I don't mean that in any kind of derogatory, judgmental way. It's just that model fits certain clients and it fits certain advisors, right? And certain advisors, there are many advisors, like many employees in other industries, who should never become entrepreneurs and run their own firms just because they don't have that kind of interest or ability or skill or whatever. And, and they're great advisors, but being an entrepreneur is different. So I believe the same thing in terms of the models of of the acquirers. I think there's definitely a space, and we have great relationships with a lot of the big serial acquirers and PE-backed acquirers. But we also work with some of these firms that are not that, who are looking to grow, and all of it's possible.
I use the example of me and my husband all the time. He has spent his entire career in bulge brackets, and he's so good at it. And I sit by myself all day long, and I love it. And both of us are bringing income into our house and, putting food on the table. They're just two completely different ways to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing wrong with it. Let's take a break from the show for a minute so I can invite you to a new way to determine your deal readiness. I created a fast and easy assessment that will determine exactly how deal ready you are. Once you complete the assessment, I use your responses to identify the obstacles that are holding you back from being a deal-driven growth genius. It's as easy as heading to CoreyKupfer.com/assessment. That's CoreyKupfer.com/assessment, and filling out a few multiple choice questions. I'll be checking in after the episode to see what your results are. Now back to the show. This is an open-ended question, and if you don't have it, but yeah. Any just fun deal stories, interesting deal story, obviously without any names or identifiable, whatever, but anything interesting recently that would be fun to hear about?
Well, let me answer that. It's sappy, but it's true. Okay. It's not fun. I'm not going to make you laugh. It's not funny, but it's true. It's honest, which is that since starting Turkey Hill 2.5 years ago or whatever it was, I have been extraordinarily lucky to choose my clients.
Yeah.
And I have a vetting process that is not much different than I'm sure most advisors have, which is, do I believe in what you're trying to do? Do I think that I can, do a good job for you? And is it exciting to me? I'm one person and I'm capacity constrained. And in order to make sure that I continue to wake up in the morning excited to do my job, I have to work with people that I really, really like. So I have been very lucky to have my hand in some interesting stuff. Nothing that I think I can talk about right now, unfortunately.
Had a nice write-up in the press not too long ago on a nice size deal you did, right? That's public.
They were wonderful people. Really, that was just a tremendous deal to work on. Just really, really good people.
Why don't you say quickly on that for the people who haven't seen the press, what obviously nothing that's not public, but who was that deal?
That was Stillwater Investment Management, and they sold to Dakota down in Florida. Just really, really good people on both sides of the deal that made it so enjoyable to work on. Just going back to what I was saying earlier about being able to take a step back and look at it from the other person's side. They could do a TED Talk. If there was ever a partnership that I believed in, these guys are going to do great together. That was such a nice one to work on. But and that kind of goes to what I'm saying, I feel very lucky to be able to work with people who I really, really believe in, either their mission or their goals or them as human beings, which is just awesome.
That's great. Yeah. Listen, it is one of the benefits, and I said this a long time, ago. one of the benefits of having your own firm is that you can choose, now, unlike you, when I started my firm, now we're going back over 30 years ago.
Yeah, you figured out how to start a fire, and then you built a law firm.
Exactly.
Is that right?
Exactly. No, it was the ancient times. Like I actually had to like wire, computer. So I had a server closet with, computer, whatever. And, for me, I was also 30 years old and had been at big firms where they discourage you actually from developing business. So I started with nothing. And so in the beginning, maybe you're, in that situation, you could be a little less selective. But I remember a few years in only where I quickly built it up. The first time I was like willing to fire a client who was not ideal for me, meaning like they just were not respectful, they whatever. Like I didn't drive with them. It was the most freeing feeling in the world, because obviously when you work for somebody, you don't get to choose who you work on always, And I was like, wow, like that really drove it home that I can work with whoever I want to work with. And it was actually one of my biggest clients. It was pretty lucrative, but it was just unreasonable and crazy. And I'm like, I'm not doing it, right? So it is a great feeling to be able to do that.
You get to, you provide better advice.
Yes.
When you feel really good about the people that you're working with.
Yeah.
Not that you or I or anyone else would ever intentionally lead someone down a wrong path. But you think about it in the shower, right? Like you think about it as you're going to sleep, and you do that for people that you want the best outcome for.
Yeah. Yeah. What have I not asked you that might be interesting, whether it's about what you're doing, about the market, about what you see, anything?
Good question. I guess one thing that I don't think I've spoken about publicly that I think is just very important now that we have a captive audience to I guess just, help educate anyone who's contemplating a sale specifically, is that the exploration of a deal is free. Or, I mean, not free. Look, you're paying a retainer, whatever. But I think what holds a lot of people back from deciding that they're, going to go out and find a partner is getting over the hurdle of like, oh my God, I'm going to put my firm up for sale. That's so scary, right? And then what if it leaks? What if I don't find anyone I like? Like, there are so many what ifs and scary things along the way. And what I like to tell people is like, look, we're going to know within 2 or 3 months whether there's a market out there and whether there are people who you feel like you can do a deal with. And you can be halfway through negotiating a purchase agreement and decide it's not for you and walk away for any reason. And the only thing that you've wasted is a few months of your life. Nothing is done until a purchase agreement is signed, unless you do something really terrible. Right? But by and large.
Yes.
And I think it's just important for people to know that you're able to kind of walk down the path. Yes, I mean, it is a time commitment. It ebbs and flows in the amount that you're needed over the course of, putting information together and looking through proposals and having meetings and all of that. But it really is an exploration. It's not a commitment, until you are 100% confident that you're ready to commit.
Yeah, I love that. It's great advice. So I'm trying to think about anything before I ask you my final 2 questions. All your clients come from referrals, at this point, generally, obviously you've got a business model that distinguishes you. We talked about how advisors distinguish themselves, whether it's with their clients or for potential deal partners. One of the things that distinguishes you, obviously, is your business model. I know you've been in the industry, you have contacts, but what do you generally get your clients?
It's 100% referrals. I have a LinkedIn presence. I've been in news articles, podcasts, speaking engagements, whatever. I like to say, like, either you're going to hire me or you're not. A lot of it is personality driven. You don't need a degree in rocket science to do M&A. You do need to have a personality that people feel comfort and that you're not gonna embarrass yourself or them or do something stupid. But I have been very fortunate that I have not had to drum up business yet. I think the biggest referral compliment that I have received to date was from opposing counsel. Like on another deal, I'm like, man, that was kind. That really says something.
No, yeah. When you get anything from the other side of the table, that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
I've had a few times in my career where actually the firm on the other side of the table ended up hiring me for their next deal.
Right.
Because they were like, I'm like, okay, that
No, was I too soft?
you cannot beat that, right? Good stuff. All right. Well, if people want to find out more about you and your firm, which I'm sure they will. I mean, one of the things that before I finish that question, one of the things that I love, I mean, it's the same thing we were talking about before. I love the fact that the wealth managers in the industry have all these options for buyers and what, but I also love, like, again, there's different models, right? So some people will, in terms of you, right? So some people will be more drawn to an investment banker, even though they have to pay a success fee because whatever, they want a bigger shop or they want whatever attracts them to it. But you have a distinguished model that obviously, that some folks will and have clearly, been drawn to as well. So for me, it's great because I like to have options for my clients as well, because you deal with all kinds of different people, different clients, different priorities, and to have quality options for them is great. And so I really appreciate what you do. And where can people find out more information about you?
Well, my website is terrible.
Yeah.
I'm relaunching one at the end of September. So we are actively working on some copywriting and I don't know,
The classic shoemaker's
I don't
tale.
know.
It's like you're too busy working,
Problem with being a small business, like you gotta do all this stuff
Of course.
outside of your day job. So I do have a website, turkeyhillmanagement.com. It's not great, but it's there, and you can reach me there. Can I provide my email address? Jessica at turkeyhillmanagement.com. You can send me an email. I post videos on LinkedIn once a week, just trying to help demystify M&A and educate the general public. So you can find me there. And then I pop up here and there in conferences, on panels, and in news articles. I don't know. Google my name. Hopefully nothing bad comes up.
Excellent. So, Jen, my final question on the podcast is always about my highest value in life, which is freedom. And for me, that means everything from freedom in the world, for all people, from oppression to why I've been an entrepreneur for 30 something years and haven't had a boss. What does freedom mean to you, and how does it impact your life and business?
Well, I did start a company out of an investment banking background. So on a personal level, where I'm at in my career and everything that came before it, the freedom that I currently get to enjoy from a professional standpoint is the fact that I have 4 little kids. They're 2, 3, 4, and 6, and I get to have dinner with them every night. I get to do something that I am good at. I get to work with good people, and I don't have to sacrifice watching my kids grow up, which is pretty great, especially as a female in finance. It's not, these opportunities don't present themselves very often. And I was fortunate to be able to create it for myself, but not without putting in the sweat equity leading up to it. So that's pretty cool. I think from a advisor standpoint, and perhaps this is a little bit counterintuitive, oftentimes it's finding a partner. It's having a boss for the first time in 30 years. And the reason that I say that is because you're able to free yourself from everything that's taking up your time. So, being able to relinquish payroll and, compliance and whatever else, managing people, whatever it is that you don't like doing, so that all of a sudden you have the freedom to go back and do what you started this business to do in the first place, with the added benefit of having time to spend with your family or on your hobbies or whatever else. Is that a good answer?
And I love that. I particularly love that answer because one of the reasons why we reformatted the podcast after year 1. So this question's been going on the last 3.5 years of podcast. And the reason I love asking it is, first of all, because it is my highest value. So I'm always interested in it. But, you get different people from their different perspectives, their different times in life. It means something different to them, right? And it's, and it's always fascinating. And I love that contrast, right? Like, contrast to me, like not having a boss there. But yeah, I mean, that's definitely the case with deals we do. A lot of the drivers for folks who have been entrepreneurs and had that type of freedom and identified with it as freedom for a period of time, they get to a certain point where they were looking for a different type of freedom.
They're no longer free. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Free.
Right.
Yeah, freedom and freedom means something different to them, and being able to just focus on their clients or being able to, whatever it is. And getting a lot of stuff taken away is freedom, and I think that is a driver for a lot of people. And I love the fact that you gave both. I mean, and one of the things that I do particularly love, and it's funny because I usually just end after people give and thank people if they give their definition of freedom. But I really like yours for a number of reasons, including the fact that you had that twofold, right? And one of the things that I'm encouraged by, I mean, we're not where we need to be, but I think, one of the benefits of COVID and some of these other things are that the world has become more accepting of different business models and remote work and the ability, and for me personally, it's really inspiring that people have more of these options, and you're an example of that. I mean, 4 kids under 6, I mean, and running an M&A advisory business at a sophisticated level with great clients and be able to have it all, so to speak. I'm sure there's challenges. I'm not saying it's easy, but to have all of that is, it's inspiring.
We'll sit around my dinner table and you might disagree with the freedom aspect of things. I'm confident one day it'll pay off.
I love it. Jess Polito, thank you for being such a great guest on the DealQuest podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of DealQuest, where we help you understand how deal-driven growth can be your ticket to freedom. I want to invite you to a unique way to tap into the wisdom and experience of the DealQuest community. Join the DealQuest Deal Den Zoom calls, a free monthly 90-minute mastermind. In the mastermind, we address all the challenges you may be facing and help support you with the opportunities that may arise in terms of deal-driven growth. You will get input not only from me, but all the members on the call will collaborate and serve each other in a mastermind format. To sign up for the free mastermind, go to www.corykupfer.com/dealden. That's corykupfer.com/dealden. I'll see you there. I'm Corey Kupfer. Until next week, wishing you the freedom and financial prosperity that I know your DealQuest will bring.